It's been a while since we did a recap, so here goes. We're on day 18 of the coast adventure. Now, you might be thinking, why has it taken you 18 days to travel around the coast from Weston-super-Mare to Whitby? Well, believe it or not, we've done 2,700 miles and spent over 100 hours in the saddle on the move. That's an average of 150 miles a day on whatever road we can find that is closest to the coast, which is mainly minor twisty roads. We've averaged nearly 6 hours riding a day. That doesn't include when the bike is stopped. A typical day takes around 10 hours to complete. If you've been watching, you'll know we haven't done it all in one go. This is the second day of our fourth leg that started when we returned to Skegness on the east coast. We did 250 miles yesterday and thankfully the weather just about held for us. Today is much brighter but cold.
Wow, that's fantastic, isn't it?
Yeah, it's roaring in. Toilet?
Yeah.
Yay! Right, back to the coast. Just come and take a look and listen to this. On this east side of England we have the North Sea, and during this trip it was really roaring in and was wonderful. The constant movement of the water, the sound of the waves and pebbles, and the early morning light was just beautiful. We think the coast is always a great place to be, but when the sea is like this, it seems to make the coast that much more special somehow. Dear, that minibus is stopping. That's the last thing we want, isn't it? Oh well.
Absolutely last thing you want right now.
It was still unnerving to stop at this point. You don't see it on film, but the bike was struggling for grip. The most challenging part was still to come. We needed to set off and get enough momentum and balance to take the corner.
You can do it. Give yourself some run up now.
That was awful, wasn't it?
Yeah, just going too slow, aren't they?
Yeah.
They don't realise that on the bike things are slightly different.
Going down, there's a sign that warns it's 25%. Apart from a few notable exceptions, that's the steepest roads get in the UK.
As is the case with most places on our coast adventure, it's either a brief stop or sometimes not even that. It was a brief stop at Saltburn, but only out of necessity. Looking back though, it's yet another place we wish we could have spent more time at, but we were on a mission, Scotland before the end of the day, and we wanted to avoid the storm that was coming. bet those windmills are turning all the time.
Yeah.
They're very mesmerising. You could find yourself staring at them and going into a bit of a daze. Look at that. I love the tractors on the seafront.
Yeah, for the boats.
Yeah.
Drag the boats down the beach and drag them back.
Yeah, look at that. Old rusty things. Well, that one isn't, but the other ones were. Where actually are we? Do we know?
No.
I don't know where we are. I'm trying to work out what it is. I thought for a minute it was a great slide, but I don't think it is. I don't think it's a windmill. I think it's just a feature. Bit of a shame. We could easily made a brilliant slide round that.
Helter-skelter.
That's it. Helter-skelter. Showing our age. Sense some history here.
People are probably screaming at the screen now, telling us where we are.
Yeah. Don't you know the history? It's famous for this and this. Sorry if that's the case. We haven't actually done our homework about this place.
The combination of the mesmerising windmills, our heated clothing and this amazing atmospheric weather was sending us to sleep, and we had lost track of where we were. We were in fact in Redcar. At 300 miles and 5 hours ride from home, we were now well and truly in unfamiliar territory. The last few episodes on the edge of the North Yorkshire moors lulled us into a false sense of security, and we were waking up in more ways than one as we emerged towards the mouth of the River Tees. Until this day, the only thing I knew about Redcar is that it had a racecourse, but I was surprised to discover just how close to the town and seafront it is. It has been here since 1872. Even if I had the time, as a southerner, there's no way I can convey how economic, social and cultural turmoil has affected places like this. The best I can do is observe and report. You don't need to look far to see the scars left by industrial boom and bust, both on the landscape and the people. Simply take an aerial tour on Google Maps and you'll be struck by two things: the industrial wastelands and the tightly packed terrace streets, both of which have seen better days. Perhaps the most significant blow to this area was the eventual closure of the steelworks. Demolition has only recently been completed. It was once one of Europe's largest steelworks and the major employer. In latter years it limped along and spent many years in a dormant state, reopening a couple of times only to see the furnaces extinguished once and for all.
welcome to Hartlepool.
I appreciate you getting this far with all the info we've already thrown at you in this episode, so I'll try to make this brief. English history is like my office. On first impressions it looks a bit messy, but shouldn't take too long to clear up. As I start to get into it, the more I look, the more I find. After a short while, I realise this relatively small space is crammed with my life's work and impossible to rationalise. The best I can do is leave the layers as they are and continue to place more on top. English law typifies this, as does England's attempts at administering government to its regions. I am about to oversimplify a very complicated subject. After the end of the Roman occupation of Britain, the area now known as England became divided into 7 Anglo-Saxon kingdoms: Northumbria, Mercia, East Anglia, Essex, Kent, Sussex and Wessex. These terms are still in popular use, and some gave their names to the smaller counties that would succeed them. Then William the Bastard came along, although he preferred William the Conqueror, as we know the victors get to write the history. He more or less created the counties as we know them today, and they more or less stayed the same and administered their respective areas until the 1800s. The Industrial Revolution created population concentrations, especially in the north. This was one of the factors that led to the creation of smaller, densely populated administrative areas. Ever since then, our politicians have been drawing, plotting, rubbing out and redrawing lines and boundaries. What started as a noble attempt to address the issue of rotten boroughs and create a fair democracy has, dare I say, become a bureaucracy and a cynical game played by all political parties to garner more votes. Unless you live in or near them, these areas are unknown to most UK citizens. There are so many now, it's impossible to show on one reasonably sized map. Why do I say all this now? I was hoping I could simply say we've now left Yorkshire and entered Durham, but we haven't. In this episode, we've gone through the unitary authorities of Redcar and Cleveland, Middlesborough, Stockton-on-Tees, and are currently in Hartlepool, having just missed Darlington. Coming up on the right is the paddle steamer Wingfield Castle. It briefly featured back in episode 31 when we crossed the Humber. It served as the ferry before the bridge was built. It's now a museum back here in Hartlepool, where it was built and launched in 1934.
See why I did it, don't you, now?
Yeah.
Just for this. Again, just ordinary houses.
We had seen this area around the Hugh Battery when making our plans. It was another one of those places that fascinated us. Uncommercialised and still looking and feeling as it did 100 or more years ago. Ordinary houses next to the old quayside, nestled around grand municipal buildings and churches. Lovely open spaces and a simple promenade. We had not realised the significance of the place, but were about to be enlightened as we stumbled across the Battery, now a museum and England's only World War I battlefield. Join us next time to hear how the Germans attacked but were ultimately repelled from here. Well, if there's a tea room, I'm up for it.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm thinking. It says cafe.